Really excited to welcome Dr. Sarah Hillyer, who is from Sport for Peace organization, and she flew all the way up here from Tennessee today. Came in the rain, and so
Thanks.
if I will just hand it over to you.
Well, I want to know why you're standing there with the soccer ball.
This is the One World Football. It's a little campaign that we have going on this year, and it's an indestructible soccer ball. One World Football started giving these balls all over to third world countries, places that they don't really have anything to play with. So they were playing with trash when they first found it. So they made these balls that even if it gets run over or eaten by a lion, it won't be destroyed.
You know, like the everyday things, like run over or eaten by a lion. One of those.
If you're interested in this campaign, we also have brochures along the back. Please check it out. It explains more detail about us and about Dr. Hillyer, Sarah,
Thank you.
Our upcoming events. So don't forget to grab one of those before you leave.
Because as a campus, we're going to try and raise a bunch of money to buy a bunch of those balls and donate them here locally to different Indian reservations and then other places as well.
You ready for it? Oh, short. Would you guys be willing to maybe all come to the middle so we're a little bit more together so it's not so difficult to, like, I don't want to feel like Barack Obama and like go extreme right to extreme left, and then it's going to look like I'm reading from a monitor, and that would not be good. So if everybody can come together, that would be awesome. You know how he does that, right? Thank you, guys. Are you all tired from a long day of classes? A little, yes. Well, absolutely have to say that you guys are troopers for coming out to something tonight. I know that it's somewhat optional for you to be here, so we certainly appreciate it. And hopefully that, by the time we get finished, you guys will be completely inspired to take whatever it is that you do, whatever you're passionate about, to make a difference. So I appreciate the opportunity to be hosted. And I feel completely at home on a university campus. I'm a professor at the University of Tennessee, where I teach sports sociology. And for me, sports is, it's not about the almighty dollar or the wins and losses. And I'll tell you a little bit about that story and how I came to see sports and experience sports the way that I do. So most recently, I say most recently. So for 21 years, I've been using sport as a tool for peace building around the world. And I know you guys are thinking like, oh, you started this when you were 10, right? Isn't that what you're thinking? Yes, thank you. Okay, you're very good. And that came about during my university years. But what I get asked a lot, I did my postdoc at Georgetown University. I was teaching a class called Sport and Peace Building and doing research, mapping who is using sport as a tool to bring communities together, to rehabilitate child soldiers, using sport in a way that is bridging communities that are oftentimes divided. And so when I was doing this research, have you all ever had like one of the, I like to call it Forrest Gump moments? Has anybody had a Forrest Gump moment in your life? Or no? What might I mean by that? Like what, Shadi, what did?
It means that you keep running and keep trying and just not looking back.
Okay, so there is the like you just run and run and run. So that's one way. Where did he find himself oftentimes in situations where, should he have been in those situations? Like, do you remember the table tennis thing where he's like playing in China and he's like with Mao Zedong, and do y'all remember that? And then he was with President Kennedy or somebody, right? So I've had these Forrest Gump moments where I'm standing in front of people and I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Like, I'm just a country girl from Bald Knob, Kentucky. Why am I standing with the Prince of Jordan? Why am I standing with Hillary Clinton? And the reason is sport has this amazing ability to transcend cultural barriers and to remake history, quite honestly. And so I want to walk you guys through a small history. So sport and peace building. When I was at Georgetown, I was invited to this fancy dinner. This was another Forrest Gump moment. The ambassador of South Africa was sitting on my left. The president of Georgetown University was sitting just to the left of him. On my right was a famous senator who forged the first peace treaty between Israel and Palestine. So it was a table where I should not have been sitting at this table, right? I'm just like you guys. We're just like the people. And so I'm sitting at this table, and this lawyer, this law professor from Georgetown said, so tell me what you do. What are you doing here at Georgetown, Dr. Hillyer? You know, he's looking at my name like, who are you and why are you here? So I said, I'm the postdoc fellow for sport and peace building, and this position is sponsored by the Prince of Jordan. And you know, then you go through that awkward, like, okay, this is what I'm doing here. And he said, I'm not really sure I understand. What do you mean by sport and peace building? How can sport build peace? Sport actually divides people, right? I mean, there's winners, there's losers, there's antagonism, there's divide. And so I tried to explain a little more, talk about our work in Iran, talk about our work in Iraq or with Israelis and Palestinians, just to give him a picture of how sport was being used. And he goes, I get it. Do you ever come speak to groups about how sport is doing this across the world? And I said, yeah. And he said, I think you'd be perfect for my 3rd grade daughter. I think her class would really enjoy a talk from you. So sport and peace building, what are you talking about? How is this real? So I want to start by asking you guys the question, is it worth it and can you do it? What does that make you think? Is it worth it and can you do it? Just simply those questions as they stand alone.
Are the problems too big and are we too small?
Okay, that's what it makes you think of? Are the problems too big and we're too small?
As individuals.
Okay. What else does it make you think of? To make you ask more questions? What questions does it make you ask?
What is it?
What is it? Right? What other questions does it make you ask? Yes?
If it's worth it to you, will it be worth it to others?
Okay, if it's worth it to you. So this is a highly ambiguous slide, right? Is it worth it and can you do it? Well, I want to ask you guys to remember this, and I want to ask you to, throughout this presentation, to filter the things that I'm going to share with you through this lens. Is it worth it and can you do it? Actually ask yourself, can I do it? Because at the end of the day, whatever it is that causes us to wake up in the morning or causes you to actually go to class or to study what you're studying or to even attend university, you actually had to answer these questions, right? When you made a decision to come to Ferris State, did you have to answer the question, is it worth it? And can I do it? Every single day, the decisions you make require you answering these 2 questions. And so as you move forward, the more intentional you become about answering these questions in your life, the more meaningful your life will become. And I promise you that. All right, so like any good story, starts with birth. This is my mom and dad. So that's my dad. His name is Michael. That's my mom, and her name is Jackie. And they met during the 70s when things were a little bit hippie-ish. They were living large like some hippies. And so my dad actually is from Michigan. He grew up in Battle Creek. Battle Creek, anybody? No. Golly, this is a fail. Sorta?
Yeah, I was from Marshall.
Oh, okay. So it's close. We'll count that. Battle Creek. My mom grew up, she was a military brat, so she grew up all over, but they met in Indianapolis. My dad's a chiropractor. My mom's a massage therapist. I'm living the dream. Yes, I am. So, mom and dad get together. Love is all you need. We're all familiar with this. And the result of that was, that's me, and my hair hasn't changed in 42 years. Right? So, my dad came from a family, he was an only child. My mom came from a family, she was an only child. they get together. I'm the first grandbaby. Things were a little bit out of control. So the first grandbaby, it's a girl. Ah! What are we gonna do with the girl? We're gonna give her pink. We're gonna give her, what else are we gonna give her? Dolls. We're gonna give her baby dolls. We're gonna what?
Pony.
A pony? No. I did grow up in Kentucky, but my family didn't have enough money to give me a pony, but that was a good try. I mean, what color was my bedroom?
Pink.
No doubt. Actually, it was a little bit blue because Holly Hobby was popular then. Have you guys ever heard of Holly Hobby? Dang it! Okay, strawberry shortcake.
Yes.
Oh, okay, and we're back. Okay, so Holly Hobby was the precursor to strawberry shortcake. So I had like the frills, I had the bed skirt, I mean, I had all of it. Holly Hobby, dolls, 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 more dolls. So it's weird how God makes us who we are. So around the age of 4 or 5, and I'm in the cute pigtails because that's what we do. And so we're socialized certain ways. And so my grandmother, she was so happy to have a granddaughter and so happy to start getting the antique dolls, the collectible dolls, the fancy dolls, the Barbie dolls, the whole 9 yards. But by the age of 4 or 5, I had this sort of self-realization. Do you guys ever remember doing this? This like self-realization that I'm a girl and there's a difference between me and my brother or the people around me. But I had this realization that I absolutely despised dolls. It wasn't anything personal, but they sort of creeped me out. And they really didn't serve much of a purpose for me. Like, let's pretend. I mean, what do? They don't do much of anything. So one day, I gathered up all the dolls that I had received in my 4 long years of life at that point. And I got 2 cardboard boxes. Maybe I was 5 years old. 2 cardboard boxes. I got a pair of scissors. Yes, I did. So, check this out. If you take a doll, you pop her head off, right? What shape is that? Round. A head, round. Okay. And then if you chop all of her hair off, you can use it for a soccer ball, a basketball, a baseball, a football, sorta. You can kick it, throw it, spike it, jam. I mean, you can do anything you want with it. So I had the bodies of all my dolls in one box, the heads that are now like completely shaved in the other. Went outside, I was throwing them, kicking them, everything. So my parents realized, I think she maybe is not interested in dolls, but more interested in sports. So they enrolled me in baseball, basketball, football. They let me do it all. I was the first girl to play Little League baseball. And this was back shortly after Title IX when girls didn't play baseball. So those are not baseball pants. Those are white blue jeans. Because I couldn't afford, my parents couldn't afford real baseball pants, but Kmart was rocking the white jeans in the 70s. So that was when it all started. So I played baseball with the boys until I was a sophomore in high school. And then I transitioned out of baseball into basketball. But before that, I also had a career in football. Well, this is me playing basketball. That's a long story. I'm just going to skip right over that. Dorothy Hamill was obviously in style then. That was the hair thing. And then football. I loved football. But at some point, your parents have to establish some kind of gender boundaries, right? Like, okay, baseball's okay. You're really pushing the boundaries there. Basketball, that's fair game. Girls and boys are playing basketball. Football, that's really guys' domain. I mean, that's really a boys' domain. You probably don't recognize, move over Starbuck, that's the coffee shop outside. I can't pronounce his name anymore. Yes, who is he? Do you remember?
Roger Staubach, quarterback.
For?
Cowboys.
Yes, the Cowboys. Well, we grew up in really country Kentucky. We didn't have a color television until I was in high school. So I never knew what color the Dallas Cowboys were. Blue and gray, for those of you that maybe don't know the Dallas Cowboys. My parents told me, because that was my favorite team, that this was a Dallas Cowboys uniform that they got me for Christmas. More closely aligned with I don't know, the Washington Redskins, although that's still a little off. But I was obsessed with football. This is my brother. My brother is 17 months younger than me. He could care less about sports. We have absolutely nothing in common whatsoever. But at that age, we were a happy family. We did everything together, including football. So I just want to point out, do you just check out the belt? Can you see the belt? That's every NFL helmet right there. Yeah. And the yellow pants are maybe my PJs. Those are maybe my pajama bottoms. All right, so I knew that I was going to have a career. I was going to be a professional. I was going to play for the Dallas Cowboys. So at this age, I thought, I probably should get my football card. Like, I should just go ahead and start striking the pose, because there's going to be people taking pictures and I'm going to be doing autographs. So this is just a few practice rounds. It sort of got out of control. My parents started to shut me down and say, you know what, Sarah, like, it's fine for you to play in the house with your brother, but I'm not so sure that we're willing to enroll you in a football league. We don't want you to get hurt. I did what any young athlete would do. I called my agent and I said, show me the money. I want to play football. I didn't. You guys are like, what? Is she serious? So this is me on the phone. We still had the dial phone and everything. I'm not really sure how. I thought I could hear in my helmet, but I thought that was a good idea. I'm actually calling my grandmother, asking her to talk my parents into letting me play football. So that dream never happened. But what I did pursue was playing basketball. And basketball opened a lot of doors for me. I ended up going to Virginia Tech on a basketball scholarship. I was privileged enough to not have to pay for my undergraduate degree in sports administration. But this story was more complicated than I thought it was going to be. Sports for me was always something really empowering. It was something that brought our community together. It was something that I always turned to and had become, it was who I was. At 4, I knew I was an athlete. It's who I was. It was in my DNA. And you can't explain a 4-year-old, whether it's you or you're an artist or a musician or whatever it is, you know who you are. You know what those passions are. So I signed a scholarship. I went 8 hours away from home, which was a big deal for people from my small community. And I had to ask myself this question: is it worth it? And can I do it? I was scared. I was scared to go away from home for the first time. I was scared to try something that I thought was bigger than I was, from the small community that I came from, in education, a scholarship. It was really scary for somebody from a community like me. So I asked myself this question, and my freshman year, things began to change for me in the way that I viewed sports. And now when I reflect back on it, I think of myself as a sociologist who thinks in terms of numbers. And that doesn't happen very often. Sociologists, we're qualitative people. We don't think in terms of numbers. But numbers, for me, have played a huge role in my life. In college, numbers were important because it mattered how many points you scored. What was your assist to turnover ratio? How many wins versus losses did we have? Because that determined whether or not the coach was going to keep her job. Numbers played a huge role. What's your GPA? Are you eligible? Are you making the dean's list? Is your GPA high enough to raise up your teammates who are barely getting a 2.0? It was all about numbers. When you checked into study hall, you didn't check in as Sarah, you checked in with your student ID number. So it was numbers, numbers, numbers. There was another number that mattered a tremendous deal to my coach, and that was the numbers on a scale and how much we weighed. And so she used this as a controlling mechanism for a few of us, as a way to, not hazing, but if you will, bring us into the team. There were certain things you had to do to prove this allegiance to this team, that you are committed to being a Hokie, which isn't that funny, a Hokie at Virginia Tech, that's their mascot, a Hokie, and nobody can be committed to that. The mascot's a turkey called a Hokie. You can't get committed to that. But, So the pattern began where the athletic trainers would call me on game day, and they would call me at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I'd roll out of bed, put on my sweatpants, head over to the training room, and I never knew what the number was going to be. So one day the number may be 139, and if I weighed in at 139 in the morning, then I could play the game that night. If I didn't, then I had until pregame meal, which was usually 4 hours before the game, to make weight. So at that point, if you don't make weight, you do crazy, ridiculous things that it's not logical. You throw on garbage bags, you go to the student rec center and you bike, and then you sit in a sauna, and then you make yourself throw up, and you do all these crazy things so that 4 hours prior to tip-off, you can weigh a certain number so that then you can go out and perform. So completely illogical. So it would be one thing if that was just a Sunday event and that's the only time it happened. So maybe Sunday it was 139. We'd have another game on Thursday. I would get a call at 5 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. I would show up. I wouldn't know what the number was going to be. Maybe that day the number was 132. Praying that you don't trip. We all do it. We walk across the stage, you shake the hand, you get the diploma, you walk down the stairs, pray that you don't trip, and then you go back and sit with your classmates. So for me, I walked down the stairs. I didn't circle around behind my classmates. I went down the stairs, straight up the stadium stairs where my parents were waiting for me in the car right outside the Coliseum. I got in the car, we drove 8 hours home to Kentucky, and I swore I would never touch a basketball or another piece of sporting equipment the rest of my life, and said, I'm done. So I spent the next year in rehabilitation, trying to get my life back. And so for me, that was a journey of really relying on my faith, really learning to forgive, but then also to see that my identity is not in being a basketball player and not in being an athlete, but that my identity is actually something much greater. And I was saying to Emily and Shadi on the way here that, or maybe I didn't use this phrase, but I'll never forget the day that I woke up, and it was about 8 months in. My parents let me move back home, cared for me, loved on me, supported me. But I woke up one morning and it just hit me like it was like blinders had been lifted from my eyes that sports didn't do this to me. It's what someone in a position of authority chose to use sports to do to me. And if she has the power to use sports in a way that strips people of their dignity, I have the power to use sports as a way to empower, to bring about peace, to make a positive difference. And so I spent the next 4 months establishing a nonprofit organization called Sport for Peace. And that organization was initially created so that people could find peace within, and that sport could be used in a very intentional way to bring dignity, but then also to help people understand and see each other as human beings rather than numbers. And so that's sort of how this journey started. And I asked myself the question during that time of healing, is it worth it? Is sport worth it to me? And can I do this? And so when I look back on the answers to that question, I reflect on doing this now for 21 years, using sport to bring people together and to empower people and to build communities in 72 countries on over 500 projects. And so that work started in China. I had the privilege of working with the Chinese Olympic team and helping prepare them for the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. I'm going to walk you through this sort of quickly, just this journey, because I think there's a few things I want to get back to now that I know what your all's campaign is for this football. And if you guys didn't touch this football, you need to. And when you touch it, think in terms of, thank you, Shadi, think in terms of the power of a ball And so I want you guys to think about that. And this ball literally is indestructible. And the way it was created, Sting, the singer, actually put forth the money to fund this project, and it is taking off worldwide. And there are literally thousands of kids' lives being changed. Have you all touched it yet? You need to. So we did about 17 projects in China. Word got around that Sport for Peace offered free services in communities where we worked closely with partners. We didn't come in and have an idea and say, this is what we think your community needs. We saw ourselves as first responders, that if someone had a need and they wanted to use sports to educate, to empower, to do development, to do peace building, whatever it was, we were going to be there and we were going to do it for free. And we were going to do it in a way where we were responding to the needs of the local community. And so word spread, hey, there's this free service. And, you know, this was like in 1989, before sport, I mean, global sports just wasn't the way it is now. And so it really caught on in a way that was so locally owned. So that work in China, then by word of mouth, allowed us to travel to Tunisia, Morocco, Turkey, Oman, Jordan. And then after those countries, and we were doing things with elementary school kids all the way on up to Olympic athletes. And so whatever that range was, whatever need they had, we recruited volunteers in the U.S. and beyond the U.S. that matched that level of expertise. So if they needed Olympic level training, we recruited Olympic level athletes to volunteer and go with us to communities to help them. If they needed physical educators that did elementary PE, that's who we recruited. Then the strangest thing happened. Not only was I running Sport for Peace, I also got into coaching. And I got into coaching to prove to myself, and I don't know who else, but I was so determined to prove to someone that you don't have to strip the dignity, you don't have to treat athletes as numbers, but rather you can encourage them, invest in them, love them, encourage them, be their mentor, be their friend, be their mom. You can do it in a way where teams can still have incredible success on the field, but in a way that humanizes the people who are participating and allows them to actually enjoy what they are so passionate about doing. So while I was coaching, I went to the smallest private liberal arts school in Kentucky. It had traditionally been a Bible college. There were, when I got there, it was called a university. I don't know how that's possible. It was Mid-Continent University. There were, when I got there, 120 students. There were 26 girls on campus, female students. 20 of them played on my softball team. The other 6 were our managers. In 3 years, we started a softball program. It had not existed in our large university. In 3 years, we made it to the NAIA National Championship Tournament with a bunch of ragtag, really kids that would have never been able to go to university had they not had an athletic scholarship. And we used softball to reach kids in our community. We played softball in women's prisons all throughout the Southeast. We did service projects out the wazoo. And our team GPA was a 3.25. And so after 3 years of that, we made it to the national championship. I said, okay, I'm done. I'm good. I've proved it can be done, even if it's just to myself and these young ladies. And so, so I got out of coaching to turn my attention more full-time to Sport for Peace. But while I was coaching there, I remember sitting at my desk and I was planning the day's practice, and I get a phone call. And so I say, hello, this is Coach Hillyer, and it was broken English on the other end of the line, and they said, this is, and I don't remember the name, let's say this is Fatima from Iran. And we were wondering if you would come to Iran to help our women's sports programs, but specifically to introduce the sport of fast-pitch softball, which had never been played in the history of Persia. And so I thought, that is a really strange, like, is this a prank? Like, who calls from Iran? And so we haven't had diplomatic relations, for those of you that maybe don't know the history of Iran. The U.S. has not had diplomatic relations with Iran since 1979, since the Islamic Revolution. No relations. We don't have an embassy there. There is animosity. We call Iran one of the axis of evil. Iran calls us the great Satan, and if there may be a nuclear war between our countries. We hope not, but it was a very, very, very strange phone call, and I didn't really know what to make of it. But I knew no matter what, I was in, because if sport and softball could be used to break down barriers between Iranian and American people, which had not happened, and a female American or a female sports team had not been in the country of Iran in 25 years. And they had invited us to introduce a woman's sport of all things. This is one of the buildings that exemplifies the tensions that exist between Iran and America. And so anti-US, anti-Israel propaganda all throughout Tehran is relevant. It's in your face. You can't get away from it. And when we walk through the streets, when I walk through the streets of Iran, the interpreters and our hosts say, no matter what, if someone asks you where you're from, do not say America. So the Iranian people, I will say, do not feel this way. The government still very much sends out this message. The Iranian people are ready for change and very much want to build friendships with the American people. So from 1999 to 2008, I spent at least 1 month every year, sometimes more, in Iran. Literally, I took wiffle balls, bats, bases, and a giant whiteboard, and had to say, this is a ball. No idea, no concept of it. They've never seen it on the internet. They've never touched it. I mean, no concept. This is a bat. The term softball makes you believe what about the ball?
Soft.
Right, that was a problem on the first day, right? So as we're going through learning softball and the strategies, now these relationships are starting to form. And so for the first few years, it was just me that was going in. But I remember too, the first time I went, everyone was so afraid for me. They thought, an American can't, like, you can't send your single female white Christian daughter to Iran. Like, they're gonna put her in prison, they're gonna, you know, all the things that we hear, the stereotypes that we hear. There was one thing when I got off the phone call, and I called my parents immediately and said, you're not going to believe who I just got a phone call from. And they're like, okay, who? And I said, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Baseball and Softball Federation. And they were like, yeah, you're right, I don't believe you. But then it made me remember, there was one thing I knew about Iran, and that was that Iranians did not like Americans. And this is, just hear this song out, because this song was popular when I was cutting the hair off of dolls and popping their heads off. That same year, this song was popular because it was right during the hostage crisis when Iran took some of our diplomats as hostage. This is not politically correct. That is my memory of Iran, was bombing it. That was the only thing I really knew before I went. So it was this particular painting I took a picture of. This is now on the wall of what used to be the American embassy in Iran. And so when I say that anti-American propaganda is really, really, really in your face and somewhat intimidating. And if any of you go to dinner, I don't know who's going to dinner or what, or if you all want to stay and talk afterwards, I'll tell you about the time that I was accused of being CIA and chased in Iran, which is a different story. So, women's sports in Iran, are they happening? Absolutely, they are happening. And these women are starting what we are considering a new kind of revolution. So women's softball, women's basketball, women's volleyball. We started in Tehran, Isfahan, and Mashhad, 3 cities in Iran. And now we started with just a few women. Now there are 15 women's softball teams playing in the Iran Women's Softball League against each other. They sent their first Iranian junior women's Olympic team outside of the country just a few years ago. So the power of sports. The interesting thing about that is that truly we were the first Americans to go in to do diplomacy since 1979. And why? How? It's the power of a ball. Did each of you guys get to touch that ball? It's the power of a ball, because sports somehow are non-political. It allows us to share a common language. It allows us to have something that we can relate to about one another, that we see the humanity in one another, because I respect you as an athlete, or I respect you as someone who's just doing physical activity. It brings the humanness in us. And so the power of sports. This picture is at the 4th Islamic Women's Games. Iran, for several years, held an Islamic Women's Olympics, because many Islamic women were not allowed to participate in the real Olympics. That's changed in the last 10 years for Saudi this past year. And so so they held Olympics for Muslim women. So there are about 50 or so nations that come to Iran to participate in this Olympics. This particular year, Sarah Qureshi is this athlete standing next to me. She is an American-born Muslim of Pakistani descent. She represented the USA in the Islamic Women's Games in Tehran. So she was the first American Muslim to compete in Iran since 1979. And they do the opening ceremonies just like the real Olympics, right? So when they announce your country, someone walks with the flag. It was the first time an American flag had been carried in the streets of Tehran and not burned since 1979. When we walked through the stadium, there were about 10,000 people there for the opening ceremonies. They were chanting, USA, USA, which was unheard of. And so the news picked up on this, and it created this conversation around the power of sports to break down barriers. That diplomacy between Iran and America could not happen, but women playing sports is allowing this to rewrite history. And so it's the intentional use of sports. In 2007, we held the first friendship games. We took American softball players to Iran to play in their first tournament. So there were teams from all over Iran that came to Tehran that we had been training for about, I guess at that point, 8 years, to hold some friendship games. And so you'll notice the American team, we are in the white, for the red hats. And so because we are in Iran, we respect the Islamic culture and the conditions in which they are playing. And so we also played with the hijab. And then for our long covering, we went and got like double extra large and triple extra large jersey shirts at Walmart, so that they came down and covered to our knees, with pants and long sleeve shirts. And then you just throw the baseball cap or the softball cap on over the hijab. The most difficult challenge was for our catcher, wearing the hijab under the face mask. And so if there was a foul ball and she had to throw her mask off, oftentimes her hijab would come off, and then she'd be like scrambling for it, and she would just like lay it flat on her head. But the Iranians really appreciated just the attempt for mutual respect. While I was there, I also did research because I was also working on my dissertation. I did my PhD in sports sociology, and so I was working on my dissertation at the same time. And this is one of the quotes that I think really speaks to this power of sport as a tool for peace building. And she said, "Can I say something directly to the women from your country? I want to send them all a message of peace and tell them that despite our differences, despite the differences in our societies and the ways that we live, we can be great friends. I wish that we keep on having these sports competitions and that one day we go there to America to play softball and that more women's sports teams come here. We will be very glad to host them and to continue this very important dialogue." So sadly, we have not been back to Iran since 2008. If you remember the elections that were held in 2008, and the Iranian people were really fighting for change. They were shut down, unlike the change that we've seen in Egypt and other places. The Iranians were shut down, and we have not been granted visas to go back, sadly. So our work shifted from Iran in 2008 to Iraq, where we opened the first girls' basketball academy after the fall of Saddam. And so there's a basketball academy happening in the north of Iraq, but we're also using sports to empower and encourage kids with disabilities. And I say disabilities, that's the politically correct term that they use in Iraq. And many of these kids, most of them have become disabled. A, they were either born with a disability, B, a medical malpractice, so they perhaps were given a shot and the shot hit a nerve and they became paralyzed. But then the third most common, I think maybe somebody wants to give us. So, and the third most common is obviously from the war. So kids walking home from school were maybe hit with a roadside bomb and shrapnel. So let me close with, because I think we need to, this is a Forrest Gump moment with Hillary Clinton, and I'm happy to follow up and talk with you guys about how this unique way of using sport is gaining momentum, and the opportunity that you all have as students, and especially around this campaign, to raise money to give balls to people in your local community that can use encouragement and empowerment, but then also the way these balls can be used in underserved communities around the world. So the power of a ball, let me just close with that. In 2007, when we opened up the Girls Basketball Academy in Iraq, they had 3 basketballs in the whole city. And girls, because of the freedoms that they were enjoying after the fall of Saddam's regime, and I'm using their words, really wanted to become physically active and to play and to participate in society and sports. And so, because they only had 3 balls, the first time we went there to lead a clinic, there were 150 girls that came to camp, but we had 3 balls to work with. So it's really hard to keep people's attention with 3 basketballs. You want to play, you want to use a ball, you need equipment. So my colleague and I, Dr. Ashley, we went back to the University of Tennessee where we were teaching, and I don't know how many of you all are familiar with Coach Pat Summit. A few of you guys. She's the most winningest basketball coach in all of college history, men's or women's. Does tremendous things. But she's won 8 national championships. She's been Coach of the Year 7 times. Quite an amazing woman. If you know John Wooden, she would be in the same class as John Wooden. So we told Coach Summit about what we were doing in Iraq. She has sent thousands of basketballs, orange basketballs, with us to Iraq. And now girls are playing in clubs and academies all over the country. And so that is the power that a ball has in communities. And so I would encourage you guys to think in terms of the first 2 questions that I ask you, and that is it worth it? And I can't answer what that it is for you. For me, is it worth it became about, is me using something that was important in my life, sport, is it worth it to use it in a way where I'm maybe not making the most money in the world? or maybe I don't have any fame, or I'm not a professional athlete, or I didn't ever have those playing cards made of me playing football. I never did any of that. But is it worth it to use sport in a way that brings people together, that breaks down barriers, that makes communities better, that empowers human beings to see each other? And can I do it? Can you do it? You have to ask yourself that question every day. Can you do it? I would have never dreamed as a little girl growing up in Bald Knob, Kentucky, cutting the hair and popping the heads off of dolls, that because of my love of sport, I would end up being the first American to break diplomatic barriers in the Islamic Republic of Iran, or that I would be opening basketball academies and working with Coach Pat Summitt in Iraq, or that I would meet Hillary Clinton, who has partnered with us to reach women around the world through mentoring and through sports. All of that is possible if you answer those two questions for yourself every single day. And if you take those two questions serious and you make the decision to use whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is, it can be so trivial in your life to make a difference. And so as you guys move forward with this campaign to raise money and awareness around the power of a ball, I would ask that you say, yeah, that Dr. Sarah girl came, and the power of a ball is changing, it's changing the world. And that sounds really cliche, but it truly does have the power to change the world. And so I encourage you guys to get behind what they're doing, and just to make one of these possible. It's $19 when you think about what it can do. So thank you guys for your time and for coming.